All right, welcome to the wood shop. It's Mr. Bryant, and I'm here to demonstrate the jointer for you today. So the jointer is a machine that makes material flat enough that you can make joints with it. You can make perfect glue joints, especially when you're laminating things. So I'm going to demonstrate 3 different kinds of material today. Basically what a jointer can do is it takes the very rough surface of a piece of material and it planes the entire thing off. It has a 6-inch wide blade that has many teeth on it, and it'll plane off that entire flat surface, or you can also plane off the edge surfaces. Now, the primary issues with a jointer that you need to keep in mind, first of all, always wear eye protection. Eye protection because this one creates quite a lot of wood chips and potentially very high speeds. This thing is running around 30,000 RPMs, so it's much faster than most of the tools in the wood shop. All right, the next thing that I really want you to be aware of with the jointer, the real danger zone here is between this spot and this spot. So where these bright aluminum plates are and where the teeth are, this area is off limits altogether for your fingers. You can't have your fingers near it. This cutter head is covered completely by the guard, the blade guard. So when the material or the machine is in operation, as your material comes through it, it will only open enough to allow your material through. What you want to do is you want to avoid putting your fingers into the danger zone anywhere past the beginning of the blade guard, and once your material comes out the other side and it's past this side of the blade guard, then you're able to push down it on it again. The idea being, if you push down here and your material disappears, if it gets kicked out of the machine and you're pushing down right here, your fingers will be safe. If your material is kicked out of the machine and you're pushing down right here, your fingers will be safe. If you're pushing against the fence, your fingers will be safe. But if you're pushing directly down over top of the blade and the material gets kicked out of this machine, you could be in serious trouble. Your fingers would disappear very quickly in this blade. So you want to make sure that you're never pushing down directly over it. We have 3 kinds of push sticks that I like to use for this. If you're using material that is shorter than the height of the fence, you should be using a push stick at all times. If you're using material that's taller than the fence or as tall as the fence, you can hold your fingers over top and literally wrap your fingers over the top of the fence and keep them safe, because now your hands can't go down into the blade. Your fingers are keeping you from it. In this case, you would want to always keep your material in contact with the table at all times and with the fence at all times. So if I'm cutting a piece on edge, I'm going to be pushing with my thumbs against the fence at the same time as I'm sliding forward with the rest of my fingers. And I would push straight through until I hear that guard close. When I'm cutting on the flat, I want to use a large, flat, 2-handed push stick. This push stick will allow you to, it has a tooth on the back end of it here that hooks onto the back of your plank. You push the material right up to the blade guard here, and you hook on and you hold on tight to both handles. Now, this allows you some protection from the blade, because if your material is kicked out, you're still holding 2 handles and a full piece of material between you and the blade. So, in this case, you would hold both hands on top of it and push it all the way through until it comes out the other side like so. Once you hear that guard close, you know that you're safe. If you are cutting something very small or very narrow, and it's nowhere near as tall as the fence, you need to use one of these single hand push sticks. These are much narrower than this one, and they're safe to use on narrow pieces of material. I prefer this push stick because it gives you a little bit more control. It allows you to balance most of your weight on the material, and I simply hold my material down with the push stick while pushing it against the fence with my free hand. I never move my hand past the guard. Oops. Never move my hand past the guard. I hold it until it comes out the other side of the guard, and now I can push my hand down here past it and continue to push all the way through. All right. This type of push stick offers a lot less control, so I really need to make sure that I'm careful with my hand because there's very little hole in this piece of material on the jointer at this point in time. I'm just gonna pop it over there. So I would hold on to it until it comes out the other side, and I would push through and continue to hold it on this end. All right. I prefer, if you can avoid this type of push stick, it's great for table saws and band saws, but I prefer to use this type of push stick all the time on the jointer. Let me see, other things to think about with my jointer. Let's go to my safety manual. Always make sure that you're paying full attention to the work being done. You should be focused on the jointer. You should be balanced over both feet. And what I like to do is put my first foot right in line with the guard, and I actually just bend at the hips. And when I'm pushing through the material through this, I'll start on my back leg, and I'll slowly push forward until I'm on my front leg. Okay, so it's all one motion. I don't walk up with the piece of material and walk up the machine. I find that's dangerous. And something that I find kids do all the time is they always have their elbow down near the tabletop. I keep my elbows up when I'm using this machine because this blade, if we follow through with our elbow down low, dragging on the table, we could potentially drag our sleeve into this machine. So we want to avoid doing that. Let's see here. Other things to think about the jointer, we never adjust the outfeed table or the infeed table. There are no adjustments you need to make on the jointer in woodshop class. The only one that you may make in high school is to adjust this fence back and forth to joint something narrower. Not really necessary, you can generally leave it full width, but you can also adjust this fence to a bevel. And neither of those things I'm going to teach in middle school, but at the same time it is possible to adjust those two things. As far as the outfeed table and the infeed table, they don't need to be adjusted at all. Allow your instructor to take care of that. We never want to push too much material through the jointer. We would have to adjust the outfeed table to do that, and we don't want to take too big a bite. So this is set so it only takes off about 1 millimeter at each pass. It takes a little bit more time, but I find it doesn't work the machine very hard, and ultimately we come out with a nicer, smoother finish. We always joint in the direction of the grain. So look at the lines on your wood. That's the direction that you need to be pushing it through. We never joint cross grains. So we never cut a strip of wood and then put it through there. The other rules are that you should always keep in mind is every piece of wood that you joint must be a minimum of 12 inches long. So it should be the length of your ruler. If it's not that long, it should not ever go through the jointer or the surface planer. Those machines require a certain length of wood to safely operate. All right, always check your material for grit, for rocks, for staples, for nails. We never put anything except pure, clean wood through the jointer. The only exception being, you know, when I talked about sanders, I told you that you should never sand things with glue on them. Glue is fine to go through the jointer. The jointer will treat it just like sawdust. It'll chip it all off and it'll vacuum it up into the vacuum system and it's gone for good. So dry glue is no problem. Wet glue, we never put through any kind of machinery. So avoid any kind of wet glue. If your glue has not set yet, leave it for a minimum of 24 hours so that you don't ever have wet glue get on the jointer. But dry glue is fine. Also, we like to check for loose knots or any kind of cracks or rot in the wood because we don't want to put material through. This machine puts quite a lot of pressure on the wood, and we don't want to put any material that might come apart while we're operating. Finally, let me see. I guess I'll do a couple of demonstrations for you. This is called the cutter head. And the only other, I guess, information you really need to know before I do my demo is that we never plug in the machine without checking to make sure that there's no one at the machine and that it's turned off before we do so. We never turn on the power while somebody's working on the machine. So we make sure that this machine is clear of any operators anytime that we turn on the power. We don't want to have an accident that way. All right, I'll do demonstrations for you. So for this piece of material, I'm going to use my flat, hook the tooth on the back end, and push through with both hands. plane the large flat surface first. Then I will place this large flat surface against the fence, and I will joint the edge second. And that allows me to, now I've got a perfectly smooth surface that will stay flat against the edge, and that'll allow me to create a 90-degree plane between the side of the material and the bottom of the material. So again, I will push forward, I won't put my fingers over the cutter head. Once I get past it, I'll move my hand to the other and I can remove it. I'll do it again, so I never put my fingers over the cutter head. Now I can move past it. And one more time and it should be finished. So I'll push my fingers up to there, never put them over the cutter head. And then I'll move past it. And I've got a piece of material now that has two perfect 90-degree angle sides. One flat side and one flat side that are perfect. It's ready for the surface planing. When I'm using a very tiny piece of wood, oftentimes I'll use 2 push sticks. I put one on and I hold the other against the fence because I don't want my fingers bouncing. Alright. And then I'll bring it back and I'll do the other side. So I have 2 perfect sides at a perfect 90-degree angle. I'll cut my large plank. Once I have one side perfectly smooth, I put my fingers over top of the fence to protect them. Alright, and now you can see I've got one smooth side and one smooth side with a perfect 90-degree angle. Alright, so these are all ready to move into the surface planer next. I hope that helped and that you learned something here. Thank you.